Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, if you are sick and tired of spending $60 to $100 for the latest and greatest wrestling video game, stop immediately. Go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. You get to create your own wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users, totally free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, want your name in the shoutouts, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast, just like our buddies Harold in St. Louis and Mike in Lansdale, where you can sign up today. Don't forget we have loyalty rewards. $15 a month contributors get to co-host an episode of one of our live shows, like right now, and our $7.50 a month contributors, you get entered into a drawing to also co-host an episode of one of our live shows. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We'll be taking questions, comments, anything you'd like to talk about in whatever chat feature you use through the streaming service that you're getting the podcast from right now. If you have questions you want us to talk about in another episode, something pops into your head at the last minute, and we're off the air, that's okay. Call into the Fro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. Give us your questions, your comments, whatever you want to talk about in a future episode in our Talk to Text service. You talk, it texts it to us, and we can try to get to as many of those in future episodes as we can. Don't forget, if you are new to the Fro Wrestling Podcast, you've never tuned in before, or if you just want to find out what's coming to the show, go to our homepage at frowrestling.com, where you can preview all the topics coming to the Fro Wrestling Podcast. It's a great way to come up with those questions, those comments, anything you'd like to ask us for a future episode. So tonight, lots of things to talk about. It's been a big week in the world of professional wrestling. A lot of things to get to. Let's start by talking about All Elite Wrestling. They had their huge ticket kickoff party. I don't know about you guys, but myself, I'm on the list of email addresses to hopefully get an invite to purchase tickets. I expect that the All Elite show will sell out within seconds of going live. Double or Nothing should be an incredible success. They already are estimating 14,000 tickets to be sold. And the big news at the show was they announced more talent. You know, they kind of built the talent throughout the show. They started with Sonny Kiss, who is a transgendered talent who's been all over the indie scene, made appearances on Lucha Underground and others, who is also joining All Elite Wrestling. Beretta and Chucky T showed up at the show. They're going to be bolstering the tag team division. The Lucha Bros showed up and ended up attacking the Young Bucks. Nyla Rose, a female talent, Excalibur, Kylie Ray, Aja Kong from China and Japan's independent wrestling scene, Yuka Sazuzaki, Sema, who's a legendary Chinese wrestler. All these people coming into All Elite Wrestling, and it should make so they have an incredibly deep roster. Now, here's the thing. I'm a little bit worried, and I know I may not be in the popular opinion about this. I'm very much thrilled about All Elite Wrestling being a thing. But I was having a great conversation today with my buddy John, who's now down in Texas, about All Elite Wrestling, and here is the concern. You have all these talents you're bringing in, and if you were an independent wrestling fan, Sammy Guevara and all these people, if you're an indie wrestling fan, you love seeing all these names show up with All Elite Wrestling. If you're dying to see some of these unique matchups, Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page versus Pac or Neville, whatever you want to call him today, versus whoever else they want to sign, Chris Jericho or whatever, that all sounds great if you're an indie fan. But here's what you got to realize, and this is the conversation I was having earlier today with some of the questions online. In All Elite Wrestling, if they come out and do better than every single show that has ever been put out by Ring of Honor, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, and Lucha Underground combined, pick whatever their best week was they ever had combined, you're still less than half of a WWE Monday night audience every single week. And see, that's the thing. WWE looks at that as a flop. When they only have, say, 2.5 million people tune in on a Monday night, they're depressed about that. They want to get the ratings up. Whereas somebody like Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, New Japan, Lucha Underground, when they're getting 500,000 people, which almost never happens, but if they were, they'd be thrilled to the gills. All Elite Wrestling is perfect for an indie fan. Those of us like you and I who know a lot of these faces, we know who Rey Fenix is. We know who Pentagon Jr. is. We know who Beretta and Chucky T are. We know who all the Ring of Honor stalwarts were. We know who SoCal Uncensored are. But the mainstream wrestling audience, the people who really are the movers and shakers in the wrestling industry, it's not just because it's WWE. It's because the names that WWE has cultivated over the years have garnered such a huge international audience that WWE is significantly more successful than any of these guys could hope to be. All Elite Wrestling, they're going to spend a ton of money, and they're going to sign every free agent they possibly can and try to keep them on their programming as best they can and give as much real wrestling as they can. But if not enough people are tuning in to see it, you have to wonder how long the Khan family is going to want to keep putting out money for these monstrous contracts when you don't see the big enough return. Because let's face it, this can't be WWE light like Impact Wrestling tried to be quite a few times. This has to be something much more organic. This has to be something where they have to be different. By the way, I see John the Sports Guy tuning in right now from San Antonio, Texas. He's at an indie show tonight, but he's still tuning into the podcast. Love you, John. Hope to see you soon. John and I were the ones talking about this earlier today. They need more mainstream stars. And I'm not talking about if they could go out tomorrow and they could sign almost anybody who is not WWE talent. Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kota Ibushi from New Japan. If they could bring in whoever you want from Ring of Honor, whether it's Jay Lethal or Matt Taven or whoever, if they could go to Lucha Underground and bring in, Drago and whoever, Montanza Cueto or whoever you want to bring in from Lucha Underground, and then they could go to Impact Wrestling and bring in Johnny Impact, Eli Drake, all those guys, and you put them all under one roof, you're still not going to bring in the kind of audience that is even half of a WWE audience. So the conversations I've seen for weeks about the debate about whether or not AEW would ever be competition to WWE or not, what All Elite Wrestling is a independent wrestling or a diehard wrestling fan's dream. It is a conglomerate of amazing talents. Some of them we've never seen wrestle before in a premier promotion, very little production value in what we have seen. We're going to get to see an amazing show with those guys. But the reality is, what we need to see some marquee stars. Now, I understand the Dean Ambrose connection. People, is Dean Ambrose going to go to All Elite Wrestling? It sounds as though he just wants a break from the business. It's not a WWE thing. If it was, he would have asked for a release. He didn't. He asked to not renew his contract when it comes due. I truly in my heart believe that he wants to take a step away. Let's say for conversation's sake he went with All Elite Wrestling. He signs a contract with him 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, and he goes to All Elite Wrestling. That's still only 2 premier mainstream stars, Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose, who, by the way, have had matches in the past, so we're not seeing anything new there. So who else do you bring in that has a WWE presence? Do you bring in Ryback? Do you bring in someone like Wade Barrett? You bring in some of these guys who have been on WWE television, so you get some of that mainstream crossover to bolster your program. That's the kind of stuff you need to do. You need to bring somebody in who mainstream fans say, hey, I saw that guy in WWE only a little while ago. I gotta see him again. An Adam Rose. Adam Rose was never a megastar, but at least he's a face that people associate with WWE. If you wanted to bring in Damian Sandow, again, a name that you associate with WWE. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want All Elite Wrestling to turn into the place where all WWE guys go when they leave the company. But if you ever want to attract more than, say, 200, 300,000 people a week, which is what a good week of Impact Wrestling draws, and let's face it, for as much people as like to trash Impact Wrestling prior to being moved to the 10 o'clock time slot, that's roughly what they would get. They would get about 200,000-300,000 people on a good week, and that was all they would get. And the reality is that's not going to be acceptable to the Khan family. That's not what they're putting this money into. They want to see something better than that. So the signing that made waves this week was Kenny Omega officially walking out at that announcement party and being announced as an executive vice president to All Elite Wrestling, one of several. All the members of the Elite are members of the executive vice president team, and he has signed a 4-year deal with the company, which to me is a huge risk, considering if you remember when WCW went out of business, a lot of their premier talent had contracts not with WCW but with AOL Time Warner, and many of those who didn't take a buyout had to sit and wait for those contracts to to pay out before they could go to WWE. I would reference the NWO. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan had to wait 9 months after the company folded before they could come to WWE because they had to wait out those contracts. If this doesn't play out, say in a year, 2 years, the Khan family says, you know what, this was a mistake, I'm out. You may be locked into 2 more years of sitting on the bench because he signed a 4-year deal with All Elite Wrestling. I would hope the Khan family wouldn't do that, and I'm hoping they're willing to put more money into it so it makes it more sustainable. But at the end of the day, until you get some premier talent in there, you gotta wonder how successful it's going to be and what you consider to be a success. Are we talking about a good week of Impact Wrestling ratings, 300, 400,000 people? I would make the argument that 400,000 people tuning into All Elite Wrestling every week would actually be a pretty solid number. But the truth of the situation is that's a lot of people. Impact Wrestling was established right after WCW went out of business, and they've been around ever since. Ring of Honor came out in the early 2000s, and they've been around ever since. But neither one of those companies has ever broken the $1 million barrier of viewers. And WWE on a bad week gets 2.5. So, not sure what to make of all this, because all these signings, I was really hoping to see some former WWE guys announced for the company, but we haven't seen that yet. And of the guys who they did announce, Rey Fenix last night injured at an AEW show. Went for a move, took a bad fall, hurt his head and his neck. Now, they updated today that he's got an issue with his neck. It's not serious. He'll make a recovery. He's already been announced to come back to MLW to wrestle again, get a rematch with the Hart Foundation for the tag titles as the Lucha Bros. He's going to be going back to AEW for one of their shows, and then, of course, he's going to be going to All Elite Wrestling, where they'll do the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. And he's just won the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Championships as the Lucha Bros on last episode of Impact Wrestling. So they're very busy, but hopefully they gotta realize something. This is why people lock people into exclusive contracts. You just signed with All Elite Wrestling, you go to AEW, which is a phenomenal promotion, by the way. If you've never checked out AEW, check it out. But you go to that company and then you get hurt. Now, what happens to the Khan family saying, hey, wait a minute, this is our investment. We just put money into promoting this tag team. They're going to come in and challenge the Young Bucks. This is going to be a huge match. And then 2 days later, you're injured. That doesn't give the right feel. I would suspect now that the Khan family is going to be like, yeah, maybe we ought to look at this whole exclusive contract thing a little closer and make sure we lock people in a little more firmly. That's what I would do if I were them. The kind of money apparently they're offering, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to start saying, hey, listen, if you're wrestling for us, we need you to be guaranteed you're going to be at your best health, and that means not wrestling for other promotions. That's what I would do if I was them. On the Impact Wrestling front, they have a pay-per-view coming around WrestleMania time called United We Stand. They teased earlier in the week that a former Impact Wrestling TNA World Champion will be returning to the company to headline the show, and we speculated on the last podcast episode about who that would be, and there's only a few world champions that have been Impact Champion who aren't either already with the brand or aren't established in WWE or somewhere else very solidly. And I actually joked that there was somebody that I didn't think it could possibly be, and that was Rob Van Dam. It turns out I was wrong. It's going to be Rob Van Dam teaming with Sabu, a longtime partner and friend of his, and they're going to take on the Lucha Bros for the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Championship. I'm surprised that Impact is bringing Rob Van Dam back at this stage of his career. I would have thought he would have wanted to go to WWE for like a last run or something of that nature. Sabu, I'll be honest with you, I've got my own personal things with Sabu. Kind of turned his back on an interview with me for the podcast about a year ago. Just totally stopped talking to me after we had negotiated for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so I'm never thrilled to see Sabu on TV, but I'll be thrilled to see Rob Van Dam. But that is the headline for the United We Stand pay-per-view, is Sabu and Rob Van Dam taking on the Lucha Bros, which I actually think is probably like one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. I think it'll be a good match. I don't expect Sabu and Rob Van Dam to win, because I think the Lucha Bros are about the best tag team in the world right now. After that, maybe the Guerrillas of Destiny or a Killer Elite Squad, something like that. And funny, I didn't mention anybody in WWE, because I don't think any of them are on the level of any of those three teams, but makes that show a little more interesting, because of, let's face it, of all the ECW originals, most of them people don't want to see anymore. They're all so old, people don't want to see them. But Rob Van Dam has just this aura about him. People enjoy watching Rob Van Dam, and even at his age now, still hits all his high spots. So you gotta give the guy kudos for that, and I'll be very happy to see him in the ring again. I just wish it wasn't with Sabu. That's just my personal grudge. Special request this week, one of my loyal listeners, Lorelei from Norristown, asking to comment about Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey. I have a lot of problems with this storyline right now, and here's the thing. I get she's got an injury angle they're playing. And on TV, let's make no mistake about it, it is a work. She's not actually injured. This is designed for a reason, to keep her healthy and on the sidelines, to give them excuses as to how they can interject Charlotte into that match at WrestleMania. Now, Ronda Rousey, I think she's ready to go have a kid. I think she's going to lose the title at Mania no matter who she loses it to. I think if they put that championship on Charlotte Flair at Mania, you're going to have a riot atmosphere there because everybody wants to see Becky beat Ronda. In addition, if Becky wins the title by defeating Charlotte in a triple threat, I think you'll also have people who are angry. Ronda Rousey, if she is indeed taking time off, needs to lose clean. She hasn't been beaten yet, not herself, her tag team partner a couple weeks ago, but not her. She needs to lose a match clean in the center of the ring, triple threat or not. Becky Lynch needs to make her tap out or needs to pin her, one or the other. And I would actually favor the tap out because of Ronda's finishing holds. So, in my opinion, there is no other way that you could possibly book this. I think they should make it just a simple one-on-one match. If nothing else, don't book Charlotte on the card and have it be a cage match, and the whole match, Charlotte trying to find a way to get into the cage. And after Becky wins the match, then have Charlotte find a way into the ring and attack Becky to set up a future plan once Ronda leaves. If Ronda's not leaving, she still has to lose here. She has to lose to Becky Lynch. You have the opportunity, if you're WWE, to create a star in Becky Lynch the level of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I know people think that's nuts, but much like Braun Strowman a year ago, she is organically over with the fans, and I know that drives certain people in WWE crazy, but they want to push Charlotte so bad, but she's not over. Becky is over. She is the man right now. No pun intended. Or maybe there is. She is the one they need to focus their entire brand around right now. Instead of worrying about Fox deals and Roman Reigns' leukemia and, AJ Styles contract negotiating and losing Dean Ambrose and Nia Jax getting involved in crazy storylines, they need to focus on Becky Lynch as the face of the company. Nobody is even close to as over as she is. Seth Rollins might be, getting there, but even he is far and away not at the level Becky Lynch is organically with the fans. So I think that's something they have to do. When it comes to Ronda Rousey, look, I think in the year that she's been there, she's done a great job of committing herself to honing the craft and learning as much as she can. But let's face it, it takes years. Some of these independent wrestlers who I see at house shows tonight at the Coventry Mall in Pennsylvania, Triple WA has a show. I haven't been to one in a little while because I've been very busy, but they have a show tonight. And there's a guy there named Leo Sweet who is phenomenal in the ring. They have another guy, Ken Andrews, who's amazing in the ring. And you've never heard of these guys, but they've been on the indie scene for years. They have been honing their craft, learning their holds, coming up with their gimmicks, creating their characters and personas, and they live them. They have their merchandise. They have their little following at these indie shows. And then you have somebody like Ronda Rousey, who I get it. She's an incredible athlete. So are these two guys I just mentioned. She's a great talent. So are these guys I just mentioned. The difference between Ronda Rousey and these guys is you've heard of her because of UFC. You haven't heard of them. I guarantee you those two guys can put on a better match than Ronda Rousey can because they've done it for so long and they're so good at it. See, she's a draw because of the UFC name, but at the end of the day, let's face it, when you see her in the ring, there are plenty of matches I'm scared she's still going to botch something and mess something up. And it's not a knock on her ability. She's clearly incredibly talented. But you gotta ask yourself, is she really the face of the women's division going forward? And the answer is no. It's Becky Lynch. It might be Charlotte at some point again. It might be Alexa Bliss at some point again. And if they don't mess it all up, Asuka or Nia Jax has a shot. But it's not Ronda Rousey. I think she could be one of the faces, but I don't think she's the face. Heck, Sasha Banks and Bayley have as good a chance of being the face of the company for the female division as Ronda Rousey does if she doesn't get better in the ring. And she hasn't progressed as much as I was hoping she would in her first year, but she needs time. Now, I believe she's staying with the company. I think she's going to be in for the long haul. She'll probably take some time off to have kids or whatever, but I think she's in it for the run. And I think she's going to get better and better and better. And if that's the case, my entire perspective on Ronda Rousey will change. She will become someone who I will favor as being a leader of the women's revolution going forward if she's able to increase those skills in the ring. But right now, we need to see more. And Becky Lynch deserves the win in this Ronda Rousey-Becky Lynch storyline. Lucha Underground, they have some issues coming up. King Cuerno has filed a lawsuit against the promotion. For those who follow Lucha Underground, they had season 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when they got to the end of season 4, they have very unique contracts there. You're not allowed to appear on television for another promotion until all the episodes you filmed and you've lived out your contract have been shown on television. Well, some wrestlers were given the word that if they wanted to end their contract at the end of season 4, they could do so, and they were granted their release. Other people chose to remain with the company, and now they don't even know if they're going to have a season 5. So if you're somebody like Joey Ryan, or Ivelisse Velez, we talked a few weeks ago about how she's upset that they won't let her out of her contract. You can't earn a living. Well, this week, King Cuerno, who's a great talent there, he was complaining and filing a lawsuit because he said, listen, there are wrestlers making $50,000 a year in some of the smaller promotions, the independent promotions, and he's stuck making $4,000 a year because he can't appear on television for anybody else because Lucha Underground, he tried to stay loyal and stay through season 5 if they ever had one, but they haven't announced one. They film one set of episodes and then make you sit out the whole rest of the year. You're paid per appearance, so he gets $4,000 or $5,000 a year and then can't wrestle anywhere. And that's a problem. To me, that's unfair work practice. If I was them, I'd be suing too. Hopefully, many of their talents get together, sign contracts or sign a deal with a lawyer to make a class action suit, and they sue the pants off of Lucha Underground, not because I don't want to see the product. I do. But if you're a television production company, either get on board with the product or let these guys out of their deal so they can go elsewhere. Because you're costing them valuable time. Wrestlers' career, some of them extend way too long, as we all know. Hello, Ric Flair, people like that. And there are other people whose careers are cut short. And I don't want to see anybody give up valuable years of their career because they're stuck in a contract with a promotion that doesn't even want to put on a show. That's absolutely ludicrous. So hopefully something positive comes out of this and we can get people like King Cuerno and Mil Muertes and some of the other talents, Marty the Moth and everybody, into other promotions so we can see them a little more often. Got to throw this out there. Art of Wrestling, the first wrestling company in, I think it's like Prague, Czechoslovakia or something like that, crowned their first world champion. And I'm only putting it out there because there's a guy from Hungary named Icarus who won their championship, and he has toured all over Europe. And I'm really surprised WWE, when they were scarfing up talent in Europe, didn't go after this guy. And he's a legitimate stud. And I encourage you, if you have never seen him wrestle, look him up versus Joe Hendry, or look him up versus Pete Dunne, or people like that online, and see the Art of Wrestling champion in action, because it's a product that is like an alternative you could find on YouTube and you may be thoroughly drawn into. It's a very good product. And if I can find any way to help promote indie wrestling, that's something I like to do. That's why, if anybody noticed, I put at the top of my page a few months back, I started an indie events tab. Please go there, check it out. There are indie shows coming to an area near you. Go see some of these indie shows. Get up close to the wrestlers. Interact with them on a personal level. Get to know them. Become friends with them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and every other thing. That's the kind of experience you have at an indie show. You know, go to a Chikara show where they let you sit. You're literally a part of the action. Go do that. And somebody like this, Icarus, wrestling for Art of Wrestling, great talent, a guy that at some point would not surprise me if we see him in a WWE or AEW ring. Somebody we won't be seeing in the WWE ring on television for a few more days at least. Ty Dillinger. He's back from injury. Tonight he's at a house show, but he was asked on Twitter if he ever thought about requesting a return to NXT, and he said he already tried. He'd love to go back to NXT. You know why? Because he would actually be featured in NXT. He was so over in NXT. He comes to the main roster and he's been buried. And I think he's frustrated. And with All Elite Wrestling out there, an opportunity to really get some exposure, he's just stuck, toiling in mediocrity, doing nothing. He got injured in October last year. Hasn't been in the ring since. He hurt his wrist. He had surgery. Now he'll be coming back. And the fear is he'll come back and do a whole lot of nothing all over again. Much like Rusev was complaining about last week. And many other people have been complaining about for a significant amount of time. WWE has the deepest roster in the world, but they don't use a bunch of it. You know, you got people like Tyler Breeze, who was in NXT as NXT champion, and now he's just a joke on Raw, a joke on 205 Live. He's bigger when he makes a return appearance for NXT. That's a shame. And somebody like Ty Dillinger with that kind of skill set, he belongs in a more featured, a more prominent position. Now, I understand you only have so much TV time. You have to find a way to work around those confines. Get rid of some of the conversation, get back to the wrestling so you can get more stars out on television. The more stars you promote on TV, the more merchandise you're going to sell, and the more people will come infatuated with and like your product more. I get it. WWE's churning money like you wouldn't believe. They might as well have their own money printing press. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter if it slowly dwindles. You know what I'm saying? Their live event attendance is down like you would not believe. You should see the pictures online. You can find them of whole house shows where they have to literally black off half of the arena and shift everybody to one side, strong camera side for some of the shows, because there's just nobody showing up. That's a problem. I get it, you're getting all these TV deals and all that kind of stuff. That sounds great, but you still got to put people in seats. That's how you grow your business. You can make all the movies you want, and music videos, and merchandise, and figures, and replica belts, and WrestleMania access, and all that kind of stuff. But sooner or later, if you don't put a product out there that people want to go see live, you're killing your business. Give us something we really want to see. Speaking of one of their off ventures, WWE Studios announcing a partnership with Netflix. They're going to be bringing original content to Netflix. I think it's a great deal, great idea. Netflix is on the cutting edge of this streaming service world. They were some of the first to do it, and now they're really blowing it up with some amazing original series. WWE partnering with them is only going to help them. They put out 3 movies last year. They got over relatively well. You got Fighting With My Family coming out now in a couple weeks. WWE Studios has really grown since about 2002, and now it's time for them to take the next step. And if this means a better exposure and more video products, then so be it. Just please give us the wrestling part of the WWE name. Give us some more wrestling. But in the meantime, make some great films partnering with Netflix. Speaking of WWE deals, the deal on Fox, they have a bumpy road ahead of them if there is a ratings decline for SmackDown. I think that the Fox executives were expecting 4 to 5 million viewers every week when it goes to Fox. And I don't see that happening unless the booking gets a whole lot better. And what is going to happen when they're on Fox and they start to tank in the ratings and they drop down to, say, 2.2 million people? Now, that's still a much better turnout than most wrestling programs, but it's not anywhere near some of the other programs that Fox has on their television programming right now. They want to garner as many millions and millions and millions as possible. This is a bigger deal than back in the Turner days with TNT putting on Nitro. We want to see millions of people tuning in every week, and I can't see Fox leaving SmackDown in a prime location if it's not turning a profit. They went so far as this week to have a representative say that Friday nights is only a temporary thing until they find a better placement for it. You know, that's concerning already. You don't want to see a situation kind of like we had with Impact Wrestling getting bumped to a 10 o'clock time slot because people don't like the ratings for the product. So hopefully WWE finds a way to book themselves out of the corner and give us some quality wrestling so the ratings start to go up and that doesn't become an issue. WWE having contract negotiation with several other talents now. Many people talking about potentially leaving the company. And now it's to the point where WWE is really going out of their way to try to offer much longer extended contracts, 3, 4, 5-year deals, much more money, all because of All Elite Wrestling. Can you imagine if WWE redoes the deals of all their talent? They get all these guys signed, long-term contracts, big dollars, competing with the Khan family, and then at the end of the day, something weird happens. The Khan family does eventually pull out of All Elite Wrestling, and you've already got these guys locked into these long-term deals, and WWE can't get out of them. It could really leave them with some egg on their face to their stock investors, you know, but at the end of the day, that's what you got to do right now. You got to start paying. You're making these billion-dollar deals with Saudi Arabia, with Fox Network, and all these places. You better start getting out there and giving some bucks to your guys. And you better start using them better or you're going to lose them to All Elite Wrestling. New names that have been announced for StarCast 2. The show is loaded. We announced on our previous episode Sting and Bret Hart would be at the show. Now they've added Scott Hall, Lita, Magnum TA, Tommy Dreamer, Ricky Steamboat, Sean Waltman, also known as X-Pac or the 1-2-3 Kid, Conan, Jerry Lynn, David Arquette, Colt Cabana, Joey Ryan, Kevin Nash. All sorts of wrestling talent going to be at StarCast 2. You should be there too. It's going to be a great experience, and it'll be streaming on the Fight Network. I don't really know why, but it'll be streaming there, so make sure you check that out as well. And the last topic for the night, quintessential pro wrestling in Las Vegas. I don't even know where to go with this. I love to help independent wrestling, so there's a little bit of that. But at the same time, I hate insane, ludicrous stories. But this one, I can't even make this up myself. Everybody who pays attention recently saw in the news that there have been some storylines that have gotten some, for lack of better terms, some questionable responses. Some people have not been overly happy seeing, Priscilla Kelly do some of the angles she's done. A few weeks back, she had this horrible one with feminine hygiene products. About a week and a half ago, she had one where she was throwing up all over people. And now, Quintessential Pro Wrestling on Thursday night, March 14th, 2019, bell time of 8 p.m. at the Harrison Drive Suite 5 in Las Vegas, Future Stars of Wrestling Arena is featuring their main event will be Joey Ryan, the man who pulls a lollipop out of his crotch and has the, crotch grip of doom, taking on Priscilla Kelly, the feminine hygiene vomiting product. And they're going to be in the main event in an intergender match. I don't even know where to go with this because it's so ludicrous and crazy. And I'm really sad for the wrestling world when this is where we've gotten to at a show in Las Vegas, Sin City, and this is what we're resorting to. We're having the guy who pulls stuff out of his crotch versus the girl who pulls stuff out of her crotch. Really disgusting, and I hope I never have to see a match like that again in my life. For some reason, these promoters think this is a good idea. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know why they booked it. But in the end, I suppose in the wrestling world, stranger things have happened. I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks, as always, goes out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. They produce all the music and sound effects we ever use on our shows. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen to pick up your copy today. And to alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. If you're looking for your next career move and you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our sister website at frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you want more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsj101sports.com for their latest articles on the world of professional wrestling, or check out my blog, In Fro's Corner, located at frowrestling.com for my latest editorial pieces. Until next time, everybody, thank you for tuning into this live show. Take care and have a great night.